"What are these?" asked Julius. "These, my dear boy, are the collected writings of a priest who lived in an age before the coming of Old Night. He was called Cornelius Blake, a man who was labeled a genius, a mystic, a heretic, and a visionary, often all in the same day." "He must have lived a colorful life," said Julius. "What did he write about?" "Everything I believe you are looking to understand, my dear boy," said Tobias. "Blake believed that only through an abundance of experience could a man understand the infinite and receive the great wisdom that came from following the road of excess. His works contain a rich mythology in which he worked to encode his spiritual ideas into a model for a new, unbridled age of experience and sensation. Some say he was a sensualist who depicted the struggle between indulgence of the senses and the restrictive morals of the authoritarian regime under which he lived. Others, of course, simply denounce him as a fallen priest and a libertine with delusions of grandeur." Tobias reached up, pulled one of the books from the shelf, and said, "In this book, Blake speaks of his belief that humanity had to indulge in all things in order to evolve to a new state of harmony that will be more perfect than the original state of innocence from which he believed our race had sprung." "And what do you think?" "I think his belief that humanity could overcome the limitation of its five senses to perceive the infinite is wonderfully imaginative, though of course his philosophies were often thought of as degenerate. They involved enthusiasms that were considered quite scandalous for the time. Blake believed that those who restrained their desires did so only because they were weak enough to be restrained. He himself had no such compunctions. I can see why he was labeled a heretic." "Indeed," said Tobias, "though such a word has more or less fallen out of usage in the Imperium thanks to the great works of the Emperor. Its etymological roots lie in the ancient language of the Olympian hegemony, and it simply means a choice of beliefs. In the tract Contra Heresis, the scholar Irenaeus describes his beliefs as a devout follower of a long-dead god, beliefs that were later to become the orthodoxy of his cult and the cornerstone of a great many religions." "How does that make it a misunderstood word?" asked Julius. "Come, my dear boy, I thought I had taught you better than that," said Tobias. "By following the logic of Irenaeus, you must surely perceive that heresy has no purely objective meaning. The category exists only from the point of view of a position within any society that has previously defined itself as orthodox. Anyone who espouses views or actions that do not conform to that point of view can be perceived as heretics by others within those societies who are convinced that their view is orthodox. In other words, heresy is a value judgment, the expression of a view from within an established belief system. For instance, during the Wars of Unification, the Pan-European Adventists held the secular belief of the Emperor as a heresy, while the ancestor worshippers of the Edonastic bloc considered the rise to power of the despot Calagan as a great apostasy. So you see, Julius, for heresy to exist, there must be an authoritative system of dogma or belief designated as orthodox. So you're saying there can never be a heresy now, since the Emperor has shown the lie in the belief in false gods and corpse worshippers? Not at all. Dogma and belief are not reliant on the predisposed belief in a godhead or the cloak of religion. They might simply be a regime or set of social values, such as we are bringing to the galaxy even now. To resist or rebel against that could easily be considered heresy, I suppose. Then why should I wish to read this man's books? They sound dangerous. Tobias waved his hand dismissively. Not at all. As I often told my pupils at the school of illiterators, a truth that is told with bad intent will triumph over all the lies that can be invented. So it behoves us to know all truths and separate the good from the bad. When an iterator speaks the truth, it is not only for the sake of convincing those who do not know, but also to defend those that do.